You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Enterprise episode, Carbon Creek. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, we have more of your great listener feedback to share, so we'll have that at the end of the episode. Stick around for that. And remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. You can re-X us on X. We're at SQPN. And leave us comments wherever you find us online. We love to hear from you. So we're talking about Carbon Creek. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this one?
This week, T'Pol tells Captain Archer and Trip about the real first contact between Vulcans and humans. In 1957, a Vulcan craft was investigating Sputnik when it crashed on Earth, and one of T'Pol's great-grandmothers, Tamir, was one of 3 survivors. Not knowing if they'd be rescued, the survivors integrated into life in Carbon Creek, Pennsylvania. They took jobs to earn money and survive, and they saw the Cold War tensions of the time. One survivor, Strawn, who worked as a plumber, didn't want anything to do with humans. Tamir, who worked as a waitress, thought humans would soon destroy themselves in nuclear war. But Mestral, who worked as a coal miner, saw the potential in human beings, and he also got friendly with Maggie, a local bar and grill owner. And Tamir started to see human potential in Maggie's son Jack, who was trying to scrape together the money to go to college. When a mining accident happened, Mestral insisted on covertly using Vulcan technology to help rescue the miners, and he convinced Tamir to support him in this effort. When it turned out that Jack couldn't get the money together for college, Tamir also then quietly, quote, invented Velcro and put the money in for this in the tip jar in the bar. It turned out that the Vulcans eventually sent a rescue ship, but Mestral insisted that he would stay to study humans as an emergent species, and Tamir lied to the Vulcans to let him do this. After relating this episode, T'Pol let Archer and Tucker think that it was fictional, but alone in her quarters, we see that T'Pol still possesses a 1957 purse that had been carried by Tamir. The end.
Father, what'd you think of this one?
Overall, just a great episode. It's neat to think of Vulcans landing in Pennsylvania in 1957 and trying to blend in. It's also interesting to see the whole tele-story dynamic, with T'Pol and Archer and Tucker, kind of leaving us wondering there for a while, is this true, is it not, until, the reveal at the end with the purse. I like how the Vulcans are on Earth with different ideas about how they should interact. It's not just one monolithic sort of approach, but they see some differences there. And, you see some plot elements are reused, maybe from other time travel and other episodes, but it still didn't feel like a rehash. It still felt very much to me like something new. And I really liked it, when I saw it 20 plus years ago for the first time, and still enjoy it now too.
I should point out, by the way, before I ask you, Jimmy, for your impression, as we record this, we're just around First Contact Day, which is April 5th every year. So I think it's kind of appropriate. It's by coincidence, but it's kind of appropriate. Jimmy, what was your impression of this one?
Well, I liked it. Like Father said, we have among the 3 survivors, they each have a different perspective on humans. Stan is the least friendly to humans. Mestral is the most friendly, and Tamir is initially where Strawn is, but she then comes more to Mestral's perspective. And we also see early differences between them. Because initially, I guess, Tamir is highest in rank, and she leads with this respect my authority thing when they first go into Carbon Creek, and tells Mestral that she'll do all the talking and he's to keep his mouth shut. And then he's the one to take initiative and say, oh, we need currency. I'll play you a game of pool. And she's like, I thought you were supposed to keep your mouth shut. But he takes initiative. He's a rebel from the beginning. He's like Talin on Lower Decks. But it's a nice episode. I'd tweak a few things here and there, but overall, it's a really nice, pleasant episode.
I do like the fact that Vulcans are not portrayed as being monolithic in their attitudes. The way that they even suppress their emotions. Mistral has a little more emotion than, say, Strawn does. So I do like that variety in them.
This is also something we don't normally see too often, because this is a Vulcan-centric story. So it's really about the relationships between the three Vulcans and how they interact with humans. And normally we only have one Vulcan in an episode, like Spock or Tuvok or T'Lyn, and we get to see them interact with humans. But here we get to see multiple Vulcans interacting with humans on kind of a level playing field, and so we get to see more of the diversity within their race.
Yeah. So I did think it was funny. I didn't remember how we got to Carbon Creek in 1957 before I rewatched. I guess I kind of assumed it was a time travel episode, but it is kind of funny that we have this pseudo time travel, or the time travel through story, one episode after the Vulcan science director has determined that time travel is impossible. And it's almost kind of, I feel like it's almost kind of placed here for that reason. There's sort of a contrast with the time travel of the previous episode. This isn't time travel. It's clearly not, obviously, but it is, it's a little bit fun to see. It is clever that they did not just do a time travel story. I mean, that's Star Trek has done that quite often. They did something different. I like that they did something different. It is the same sort of thing that Voyager did in that episode 1159 about Captain Janeway's ancestor. Where she tells a story about her. I do like that. I like that difference. So that was really nice. So the frame narrative is a dinner party with T'Pol and Tucker and Archer celebrating T'Pol's 1-year anniversary on the ship. And Archer brings up the fact that T'Pol went to visit this Carbon Creek, Pennsylvania, at some point on her time on Earth, and was wondering, like, what brought you to nowhere, Pennsylvania? And she said, vacation.
She's really defensive. She's like, I also, and understandably, I mean, he's been checking up on her.
Yeah.
I would wonder, if I'm someone other than T'Pol, has the captain been looking at my vacation records too? It's a little invasive.
Right.
So she's initially defensive and says, well, I also visited Carlsbad Caverns and this other, and I don't know, the Grand Canyon or something. I'm a geologist. Big deal.
Yeah, right. But it's funny, like, at first she's not going to say anything, but she's drinking wine, which they point out she doesn't actually drink alcohol, regularly. Yeah. And so maybe that loosens her up a little bit. Maybe the alcohol has the same effect on Vulcans it has on humans. And so she starts to tell this story
it does, only with more rage.
Right. But it does loosen it out, and she tells the story about the real first contact, which is kind of fun. It's a little bit Mysterious World, the true story behind what history tells you. So that's kind of funny. So
she also identifies Tamir. There's a nice little bit of Vulcan culture here. She identifies Tamir as her second foremother. Which is interesting to me, because different cultures have different kinship terms and ways of classifying relations. And so she has to explain that that her second foremother is her mother's mother's mother. So the foremothers are the maternal line, strictly speaking, going back. And I thought that was interesting, since they indicate that this is Sputnik that the Vulcans were investigating. That's like investigating Zefram Cochrane's warp ship.
Yep.
And it also gives us an exact date for this, because Sputnik was launched in October 1957, and it was in orbit for 3 months. So since Sputnik is still in orbit late in this episode, they must have arrived in like October to start monitoring it.
Yeah.
And basically this occurs over the course of Sputnik being in orbit. which it creates some problems. There are some chronology issues with that. Among other things, a lot of the events would have happened in November, December, and January.
In Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania, and there is no snow on the ground. It looks like summer.
It is not cold. Also, they go to baseball games, which would not be played. You might catch the end of the World Series in October, but you're not going to be watching baseball. So yeah, it is problematic. They were in the forest for a period of time after the crash.
Yeah,
where they're surviving.
I wanted to comment on that too. So they say that their food supplies ran out. They apparently had some food supplies with them on the ship, but they ran out. And after 5 days, their situation was quote unquote desperate. And they even consider eating a deer, which of course is meat. And so they're like, are we going to descend into savagery? And it's that motivates them to move into town. And I thought this was weak in the write-in. For one thing, Vulcans can't forage for plant food with all those tricorders they're carrying around. But even more, I thought your race was very disciplined. Apparently, Vulcans don't have much fasting ability if they can't go for 5 days without desperation if their food supplies run out. Humans sure can.
Yeah, that was like, should have been longer. Like, and that actually would have helped the story if they were out there for months as opposed to days, because then it would be in the springtime and there would be baseball and all that sort of stuff. So, I'll headcanon it as they misspoke. Maybe it was Vulcan days. So the other thing too is just about the area. I'm familiar with central Pennsylvania very, very well. I've driven through it many times. And I do believe that you could crash a spaceship in the areas. There's a highway that's mentioned, or at least in the background, that's an actual state route, and where that is pretty remote, and it's coal country. That's so that all tracks. So they did a pretty good job of that.
One thing they did in the 1957 sequences is they used some kind of filter on the visuals when they were filming this, or in post-production or something, the color balancing everything, even though you can tell people are wearing colored clothing. So like, a blue shirt or a red shirt or something, there's this filter over everything that makes it all look drab and washed out. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I get the aesthetic they're conveying, and for a coal town in the 50s, it's a little like black and white, but it's not real black and white. They couldn't do that. That would take us into Captain Proton territory. But it looks a little drab to me, and part of me gets it, but part of me is hesitant about it.
It felt like to me that they were trying to match the color grading of old 60s TV, like when Star Trek, the original series, would go to, Earth and be outdoors filming on set, on the various street sets, whatever. I felt like it was kind of evoking that kind of color grading. It might have been, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but that's what it kind of felt like. They wanted it to be distinct from, modern futuristic planets they go to, I guess. So, I wonder, I'm curious now about how the cinematography works on Star Trek. Do they intentionally try to make, when they're filming on alien planets, do they try to make it look less earthy by being, having bright, colors and lighting and that sort of stuff? What tricks do they use there to help convey that? I'd be kind of interested, actually.
They use bright colors, except when they're making it completely dark, like Glorndon Core.
Yeah, right. So we have a scene where Tamir and Mistral have to steal clothing to fit in, and that's evocative of City on the Edge of Forever. Yep. Right down to the knit cap that Mistral wears to hide his ears. So that was kind of fun.
One thing I thought they were going to do, and they didn't end up doing, is I thought they were going to let their hair grow out so they didn't need to continuously wear the cap. T'Pol's hair, or Tamir's hair, is long enough. She doesn't need one. She can just rearrange her hair so it covers the tops of her ears. And there's a joke about Strawn not needing a cap. He's working as a plumber, and one local lady has taken an interest in him, and he keeps having to come over to fix her sink. And he's not too happy about that, in part because her son refers to him as Mo, because of his resemblance to Mo Howard, one of the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
And Mestral notes, there is a similarity in the hair. So he doesn't need to wear a cap, but Mestral is wearing a cap all through this. And I thought they'd just let him grow his hair a little longer to where he didn't need to do that. It's also interesting in the clothing stealing scene. And part of this is just the nonsense that, that they were trying with Enterprise, but we see a silhouette of Tamir behind a sheet putting on her dress. And the silhouette does not leave a lot to the imagination. No. But what I do like about it is when she comes out, Mestral has to point out to her she's got the dress on backwards.
Right. Yeah, Enterprise was really...
So the back of the dress is on her front side, and the front side of the dress is on the back side, like it's a zip up, like it's like it's anyway,
buttons, whatever.
She's got it. Yeah, like she needs Mestral to button her up on the back, but that's really the front.
Yeah. So Enterprise really wanted to be like the most sexually suggestive show, of all the Trek shows. They really, I don't know whose idea it was at the time, but it was annoying to continually do that.
At least the Vulcans didn't have to decontaminate themselves after they landed on Earth, right?
I love how Lower Decks made fun of all that.
It's hard to imagine it's good Gene Roddenberry was safely off the planet by this time, because it's hard to imagine what he would have done with Vulcans and goo.
No kidding.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
We'll never get a comment from the Vulcans here about the human smell. Often you had comments before in Enterprise about how can T'Pol put up with the smell of the humans, and she talks about having a nasal suppressant or something, and there's no comment here about them running out of the nasal suppressant or having it or not having it in the first place or whatever.
Yeah. Tamir makes an astute observation at one point. They're watching, or Mistral is watching TV when they're in their apartment, and he's talking about how fascinated he is by humans, and Tamir makes the astute observation that we're such a primitive, savage species. And she says at the same time we're starting to launch satellites, we still had people living in primitive conditions. And she was talking about coal miners, but even beyond, coal mining in Pennsylvania, there were people even in more primitive conditions, in the 50s or even today. And I think it's, kind of astute. Like, you can have a culture, you can have a civilization where part of it is heading to the stars, and part of it is still, with the inequality of wealth distribution, that sort of thing. You can have a part of it that's still living in poverty and in squalor. I don't know that that's a disqualification for a society necessarily, but maybe some people like to live more primitively. They hold on to their traditional ways and their cultures, but nevertheless, I think it was astute and kind of puts a pin into how often Star Trek portrays planets with monocultures where everyone is the same. So I thought that was kind of an interesting observation.
One of the things I noticed about a famous, it may have been Ursula Le Guin, but a famous science fiction writer, all of her stories are like about alien civilizations, or her stories that are about alien civilizations are all ones where everyone has jobs like artist and teacher and stuff like that. And it's like, if I ever write, science fiction stories, I'm going to have main characters who are truck drivers and plumbers and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Golden Age sci-fi tended to have this high-minded view of the way humanity would evolve, and we would never, all of the lower blue-collar jobs would be done by automation or something, and we'd be left, doing all the cultural, artistic things. And because the fact is they're all writers, right? They're all artists.
What they didn't know is artificial intelligence is coming for those jobs too.
Yeah. First, probably.
Well, I was going to say, in fact, it can write stories and paint pictures for us right now, but it can't fix your heating system yet.
No, those jobs are pretty safe for a while. So we also have the classic fish out of water tropes throughout, where we have humor that comes out of the fact that they're not part of, they don't know how things are supposed to happen. I do
like when they're coming out, they've just been buying groceries and they bought a bunch of TV dinners.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mestral makes the comment, cryogenics.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he used a more appropriate term than cryonics, which deals with freezing humans so they can survive.
Yes.
But even cryogenics is, I don't know that that's exactly appropriate for TV dinners. What I was wondering is every TV dinner has a big meat portion. That's
Right.
the usual. That's the usual way, way they're structured. And
Salisbury steak.
you wouldn't find vegetarian TV dinners in the 1950s.
No, you wouldn't. Tucker does point out 2 Vulcans stroll into a bar, hustle a few games of pool, and walk out with an armload of TV dinners. It sounds like an old episode of The Twilight Zone, which is nice to know. The Twilight Zone is part of the Star Trek universe. That's and I do like that. Mestral, you mentioned how he plays the pool in order to win money to buy the things that they need, because it's simple geometry. He says you still got to know the rules of pool. You still got to know. The 8 ball has to go last, that you have to call the, so he must have watched a game or something. You'll have to headcanon that.
And of course, that scene's also a reminder of Data in 19th century San Francisco playing poker to get some money when he needed it.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. Strawn and Mestral seem okay with cutting corners at different points to get by. Mestral is, clearly is doing lots of things where he's going beyond the no contact stuff. But even Strawn, we see him, he's working on the plumbing and he can't get the piece off.
He uses the master's laser screwdriver from Doctor Who.
Yeah. Welds the hole shut on the pipe. That was funny. Mestral, he notes, while Tamir is very pessimistic about humans.
I just thought of something.
What's that?
So Tamir gets a job at the bar and grill. Yep. So she's got a human employer. Mestral gets a job at a coal mine, so he's got a human employer. But who is Strawn working for? Because this is a small town. It's not like they'd have a big plumbing agency. And so if he's working for himself, where did he get a business license?
Or is he a plumber or is he a handyman? I kind of got the sense that he might have been a handyman, doing various odd jobs here and there.
Yeah, they just show him doing the plumbing though.
Right.
But do they have IDs and social security cards? And
well, you didn't necessarily need all that in 1957.
Right. That's true.
You could get by without it easier than you could today.
Yeah. Today. Yeah. That's the interesting thing about, when we do these stories, is how much different they would have to do it today. So there is this debate between Tamir, who's pessimistic, and Mestral, who's optimistic about humans. He notes the empathy and compassion that they've received, and Tamir says, "Yeah, because they think we're human. Imagine what it would have been like if they knew what we really are." So they both have good points. I do want a little Easter egg. Mestral says he's going to watch I Love Lucy. I'll be back by 8.
Oh, it's great. He lies and tells he's really going to go to a baseball game with the bar and grill owner, Maggie.
Yeah.
But he lies to get out of the house and tells Tamir that he has to go back to the shuttle way outside of town where it crashed to get a
antenna,
a waveform discriminator to add to the television's antenna.
Right.
And she says, well, it would be safer for you to do that after dark. And he says, no, I got to do it now. I Love Lucy is on tonight.
Yeah.
which is great. Although actually another timeline problem, I Love Lucy aired its final broadcast on May 6th, 1957, which would have been several months before Sputnik.
Right. The nice thing is that the Easter egg in that is Lucille Ball was instrumental in getting Star Trek on the air, because it was the original series was filmed at Desilu Studios. Desi Arnaz, Lucille Ball, that's their studios, and she pushed Star Trek to NBC, said, you've got to air this. The detail, there's more details on that, but so it was a nice little tribute to Lucille Ball in this one. So I like the fact that they included it. One thing I noticed as I saw Mistral kind of as he left the apartment and was going to meet up with Maggie, he's starting to move more like a human. The Vulcans can be quite stiff or very formal. Mistral walked very relaxed. I noticed that the actor. I don't know if the actor's doing it intentionally or not, but it seems like he was intentionally conveying the fact that Mistral is assimilating. He's becoming part of the community. He's becoming more like the humans. I do like the fact that if they were including that intentionally, that I think it's a nice addition to the character.
Although he's obviously not all the way there yet, because when he gets back from the baseball game with Maggie, she kisses him and he doesn't really know how to react and says, "Oh, that was very pleasant." And she's like,
pleasant.
Is that all you got to say? And it's like, I did say very pleasant.
Yes, that was good. I did say very. Yeah. So you have this conflict, and then of course Tamir catches him, and you have this conflict. Tamir is still in command, and Mistral's like, "Commander, what? Like, we're stranded here. We're not going anywhere. We have to start settling in." And it's an interesting. It's one of those interesting dilemmas about the idea of when you get stranded in this place, what do you do? Star Trek has done this a few times. Sometimes they say, "Oh, go out into the wilderness, go far away, and settle down far from civilization and have no contact," or in this case. Mistral's like, well, all three of them we're settling in a community and just trying to hide. So there's that question. But Tamir begins to change, as you mentioned in your summary, Jimmy, is when she meets or starts to engage with Jack, the son of Maggie, the bar owner, who expresses interest in what she's studying. I do like the fact they don't make it him having a crush on her or anything like that. He's just friendly, and that's really nice.
Yeah, she's initially sitting down. It's apparently after closing time at the bar, and she's fixing up the tables for the next day or whatever, and they have lit candles in little candle holders on the tables, the protective kind, so that it's not an exposed open flame. But she sits down and is about to start meditating in front of one of these candles, and Jack comes up. He's just getting home and sees what she's doing, and he recognizes it as she's meditating, or she's about to meditate. And it turns out he knows about meditation. He's read about like Tibetan meditation at the library and stuff. He also knows about astronomy, which is something she's interested in as a space traveler. And so he's striking it without realizing it. He's striking up a connection with her by knowing about these things and taking an interest. He's not just a barbarian who wants to go nuke the Ruskies. He's a thoughtful person who studies stuff, and that's what starts to open her up to the possibility of maybe there's more to these humans than I thought.
Right. And that scene where she's starting to change is followed quickly by the mining accident where there's a collapse and this miner's trapped, and Mistral he's like, I'm going to go. He runs to the ship and to get a particle weapon so that he can blast them out. And it's interesting. There's a small bit of pushback by both Tamir and Strawn, but very quickly they're there to help him. Like, Tamir uses a tricorder to lead him to where he can, surreptitiously break through the rockfall and get to the miners. And it's pretty, it was nice to see that that the value of life was more important than, standing on this principle of we shouldn't interfere, because it's not like a time travel thing where you might change the timeline. It's do we help people or not? And I like the fact that Tamir made the right choice there.
Well, for Mistral, that's what it is. I'm not as sure. And I taking Tamir charitably, I can read her that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's what what Tamir and Strawn were saying to themselves, because Mestral has indicated, I don't care what you guys say. I'm getting this particle weapon. I'm going to get those miners out, and I will try to hide it from them, but I'm getting them out. And given that circumstance, I could see a Vulcan who is determined not to interfere, or to interfere in the least intrusive way possible. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to do this and we can't stop you, then we'll at least help you do it surreptitiously.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And Tamir and Strawn are right in their objection to Mestral, in that we cannot let a particle weapon fall into the hands of the humans, because a weapon of this, destructive power could cause havoc on this planet. It could, you think nuclear weapons are bad. It could have been a lot worse.
Oh, yeah, that's a serious concern. Like if I was transported back to the 1700s and, oops, I left my iPhone, they might develop destructive technology early. It's not, they're not capable of reverse engineering my iPhone in the 1700s.
Right.
Well, there is that doctor at China Lake Naval Weapons Station, Dr. Salvatore Pais, who has patented various futuristic technologies.
True.
So not out of the realm of possibility, I suppose, if you believe that that's what's really happening there. So the whole Velcro thing, this is straight out of the Search for Whales.
Yes, this is their transparent aluminum.
Yeah.
Yes. So here's a fun little fact. The actual inventor of Velcro, his last name was Mestral.
Yep.
So it's kind of a little funny homage to that guy as they pretend. How do you know he didn't invent the thing, as they say in Pittsburgh?
And it's another anachronism in the program. Velcro was actually invented in the 1940s, and it was patented in 1955.
Yeah.
So it was already there, but it is nice that the inventor was a Swiss guy named George de Mestral. And so it was nice that they gave his name to one of their main characters as a nod to that.
It could be, now just to kind of a little headcanon, that in the Star Trek universe, it was patented in 1955, and this businessman in presumably Pittsburgh didn't know that. And so he's like, ooh, I'm going to pay you $500, and later on finds out that he can't use this design because it's already been patented by somebody else. It was like, I was kind of thinking, like, could you take, if you had the hook and loop, could you replicate, just by having a sample of it, would you be able to replicate it? Would you be able to, in 1957, would a manufacturer be able to take that and go, okay, how do we do this? I suppose.
Because I mean, in the real world, Velcro was already a thing. So they had the ability to make Velcro, and really all you need is a knowledge of the structure of the two pieces that you stick together. And I like how they did this, because Tamir didn't have to invent this. She just had a wallet or something that was Velcro sealed, and so she just got it and then took it to this businessman, and then without any dialogue, she just opened and closed and opened and closed, and he immediately got it.
Also, keep in mind, this means that the spacefaring warp-capable Vulcans still use Velcro on a regular basis that they invented on their planet separately. So Velcro is a universal invention.
Yeah, it's not molecular sealant or something like that.
The magnetic adhesion. No, Velcro must be invented. It needs to be invented by a civilization.
It's like Swedish meatballs in Babylon 5. Every race does invent Swedish meatballs for no known reason. They call it by different names, but it's always Swedish meatballs. That's
true. I remember that. That was funny. So, and the reason Tamir is doing this is to get the tuition money for Jack, so that they had this tip jar in the bar, and she found out that he just hadn't raised enough money to go to college, and so he'd have to delay, and he might lose his partial scholarship. I do love the fact that $500 would put you over the top, because college in 1957, a whole year of college could cost some subset under $1,000 back then, before the inflation the government caused
prices. Yeah.
Yes. So that was kind of nice. So how long do you think they were on Earth all told?
Well, it's a little hard to say. I don't think the writers put too much attention on the chronology of this episode. When Jack is first warming up, or when Tamir is first warming up to Jack, one of the things he offers to do is show her Sputnik in a telescope.
Right.
And so that would mean Sputnik is still in orbit. So the latest possible date is like end of December, beginning of January. And then he's I guess was going to go to college in a mid-year break over the in the semester break for Christmas. I'm guessing. Otherwise, we've got a leap forward of like 9 months to his decision not to go to college in the fall.
Now, when they talk about seeing Sputnik, are they definitely talking about Sputnik 1, or was there a Sputnik 2 or 3 that were launched in the following month?
There were further Russian satellites that were launched, and they Sputniks were numbered. But since they only mention Sputnik 1, they only mention Sputnik as if it's the only one. I would assume it's all that.
Right.
Sputnik 2 was launched in November 1957.
Huh.
That's the one that had, Laika the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was in orbit for 162 days. So I suppose
so there are ways you can headcanon this.
Yeah. Yeah. And last contact was April of 1958, it says on Wikipedia. So, I mean, you could headcanon it.
Did they leave Laika the dog up there?
Apparently. Or Laika. Yeah.
Russians are not dogs' best friends.
No. So Mistral decides to stay behind, and Tamir lies to let him, which, apparently Vulcans can lie. We have found out long before this.
Oh, they're just like Minbari. They never lie except when they do.
Yeah, exactly.
What surprises me more here than Tamir lying is Strawn not saying anything to blow it. Seems like he would have almost felt duty bound at some point to reveal that Mistral was staying back on Earth.
From what they set up, I mean, they could give him a motive. They could have softened him up a little bit, but they didn't. So I would assume that it's his respect for Tamir as his commander that keeps him from saying anything.
Right. It's then when they when the story ends,
Vulcans are privacy freaks anyway. So which I approve of. But
yes. Trip eventually points out the flaws and the plausibility of the story, including, what happened to Mistral. Does he, even when he dies, they'll find out he's not human. They'll find the different physiology.
Yeah, except that's easy to explain. One of the things they point out is, given Vulcan lifespans, he could have lived to see official first contact with Zefram Cochrane, which would mean he went through World War III. So, I can imagine a lot of people dying in World War III who didn't get close medical observation afterwards, or even have bodies afterwards, because it was a nuclear war.
Right. And he could have, after the official first contact, made contact with those Vulcans and gone home. Yeah. But
in fact, T'Pol does say that this incident is very well documented back on Vulcan.
But she does kind of leave him thinking that she told them a tale, which is a kind of an interesting idea. Like, I'm kind of curious why she did that. Was she just being mischievous? Because T'Pol's so serious, you don't think of her having a sense of humor like that.
I think she's
go ahead.
She's protecting the narrative that they have as humans. The Zefram Cochrane story is big in everyone's mind. The whole first contact day and first contact lore is a big thing among humans, and she realizes, I think, after telling the story, that, oh my gosh, this is changing their whole history or whatnot, as I think Tucker commented. So I think she decided to back off and let them continue to live the history that they have always known. But
I like at one point Trip it says something like, next you're going to tell me Neil Armstrong wasn't the first man to walk on the moon. And she's like, who's to say he was?
Mind blown.
But I think of, I think T'Pol does have a sense of humor. It's just very, very dry.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And if you don't get it, she's not necessarily going to spell it out for you.
Yeah. T'Pol's is Jillian Blaylock does a good job with T'Pol as a Vulcan. I think she really played that character just on that right line, more serious than Spock ever was in the original series. But T'Pol, Tuvok, Spock are all great Vulcans in their own ways, and I really like how they come across. And of course, you mentioned at the end we see her go back to her quarters, and she brought with her great grandmother, I forget how many, two great grandmother's purse that she had brought back from Earth, which is nice that she has it.
One great
grandmother.
Yeah. I like in Larry Niven's Known Space series when you have people talking about their ancestors, and I've actually adopted doing this myself for clarity. Like my great to the third grandfather or my great to the fourth grandmother.
Yeah, that's more clarity, because saying great doesn't
help.
So once you get beyond two, you lose track. So nice. And 100, 200 years, they said, even with humans, it's not implausible, depending on the age of the people, at birth and when they have children. I mean, my grandfather, it's 2025. My grandfather was born in 1890, so it's not entirely implausible that my great grandfather was almost 200 years ago. So it'd be tricky, but it's possible. I think the great grandson of President Tyler died in the last few years. I think it was interesting.
Yeah.
Any other notes on this one, Father Tyler?
Nope. We covered everything I'd written down.
All right. Jimmy, how about you?
Nope.
All right. Let's get to our feedback then. Our first feedback comes from our episode Errand of Mercy. And JMC sent in an email. One note about your comments about the look/first appearances of the Klingons in the franchise. The look itself was invented/developed by John Colicos and the episode's writers. The writers didn't know what the Klingons should look like when developing the episode. Mr. Colicos was asked by the writers what the Klingons looked like to him, and he said he didn't know. And then he asked them, and they said they didn't know. And then they asked him what his impressions were based on the script. And he said, well, the character core struck him as being a futuristic Genghis Khan, and the rest became history. And JMC sent a link to a YouTube video that has an interview with John Colicos. So I'm going to play that now, and we can hear him in his own words.
When I first went in, when I did this show, I had no idea of the ramifications that it would eventually have. It was just another job as far as I was concerned. But I loved the script, and I learned the lines on the airplane from New York to L.A., and I arrived there, and they said, well, what does a Klingon look like? And I said, well, I don't know. You guys tell me what a Klingon looks like. And they said, I don't know. Do you have any ideas? And I said, well, I think since the script is what it is, let's make him a futuristic Genghis Khan, a predator, a warrior.
So
that's very interesting, but watching him without his makeup, I just can't shake the feeling he's just itching to betray humanity to the Zeframs.
He will always be the real Baltar to me. Yeah, that is nice. It's just the voice. That voice is great. I always love to hear him. I'll have a link to the whole video. There's a much longer video of him interacting with fans at a convention in Toronto, and I think that was from the 1990s. That you might be interested in. So I'll put that in the show notes. Our next feedback comes from our episode, The Devil in the Dark, and the New Jersey Esperantist writes, I only ever saw TOS in syndication, but I remember when I first saw this episode. The cold open had me stymied for a few minutes. Who were these guys in colored uniforms, but not the main cast? Once they mentioned that the Enterprise was coming, it made sense. Also, Spock's line, "Pain, pain," is up there with his line in the cage, "The women." Leonard Nimoy, when he had the opportunity to emote as a Vulcan, he did.
And for context, the women line is when they're standing on the transporter pad in the pilot episode, and all of a sudden the women are taken by the Telosians, and they leave the men, and that's what prompts Spock's line.
So, yeah, that
I can't help thinking of a different Spock yelling "Khan!"
Yes. Into Darkness last week, or I think last week as you're seeing this. So yeah. All right. So that should do it for this time. We'd like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Thomas P., Roseanne M., Dina C., George H., and Martin P. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us this time. What did you think of Carbon Creek? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com. Visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord, or comment and watch the Secrets of Star Trek on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the animated series episode, the Ambergris element, the Ambergris element. Until then, Father Jason Tyler, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Tom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and very definitely live long and prosper. And remember, I Love Lucy is on tonight.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And that was actually how I was going to end it too. So let's go watch I Love Lucy together.